I'm Megan, 31F, and I'm struggling with a situation that's dredging up a lot of painful memories. My mother, Lisa, 52F, walked out on our family when I was 8 years old. It wasn't a gradual departure or a planned separation, she vanished overnight, leaving my dad, Tom, 55M, to raise me and my younger brother, Derek, 28M, by himself. The night before she left is etched in my memory. It was a Tuesday in October, and we'd just finished dinner. Mom seemed distracted, barely touching her food. When I asked if she was okay, she plastered on a smile and said she was just tired. She tucked us into bed that night, lingering a bit longer than usual. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Remember, Meggie, you're stronger than you know." I didn't understand the significance of those words until the next morning when we woke up to find her gone. Dad was devastated. I remember finding him sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at Mom's untouched coffee mug, her lipstick stain still on the rim. He tried to explain that Mom had gone away for a while, but he couldn't tell us why or when she'd be back. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the reality sank in: she wasn't coming back. Life changed dramatically after that. Dad, who had always been the fun parent, the one who'd swing us around and make silly voices, became somber and withdrawn. He threw himself into work, often leaving before we woke up and returning after we'd gone to bed. I took on the role of caretaker for Derek, making sure he ate, did his homework, and got to school on time. We moved to a smaller house in a different neighborhood. Dad said it was to be closer to his work, but I overheard him telling Aunt Jenny it was because he couldn't bear to live in a house full of Mom's memories. I had to leave behind my best friend, Cassie, and start at a new school where I didn't know anyone. As we grew older, Derek and I coped with Mom's absence in different ways. I became fiercely independent, determined to prove I didn't need her or anyone else. I threw myself into school and extracurriculars, joining every club and team I could. By high school, I was class president, captain of the debate team, and on track to be valedictorian. Derek, on the other hand, struggled. He was only 5 when Mom left, and he had trouble understanding why she was gone. He'd have nightmares and wet the bed well into his teens. At school, he acted out, picking fights and talking back to teachers. By the time he reached high school, he was regularly skipping classes and hanging out with a rough crowd. Dad did his best, but he was stretched thin. He'd been promoted at work, which meant even longer hours. We saw less and less of him, and when we did, he was often too exhausted to do much more than ask about our grades before falling asleep in front of the TV. I tried to fill the gap, but I was dealing with my own issues. I had trouble forming close friendships, always worried that people would leave me like Mom did. My first serious boyfriend, Tyler, broke up with me because I was too clingy and intense. It hurt, but part of me had been expecting it. After all, if my own mother could leave me, why would anyone else stay? Things came to a head when I was 17 and Derek was 14. I caught him trying to steal money from Dad's wallet. When I confronted him, he broke down crying, admitting he owed money to some older kids who'd been giving him weed. I was furious and scared. We had a huge fight that ended with Derek screaming that I wasn't his mother and couldn't tell him what to do. That night, I told Dad everything. It was the wake-up call he needed. He cut back his hours at work and started spending more time at home. He got Derek into therapy and joined a support group for single parents. Slowly, things began to improve. Derek's behavior got better, and we started feeling like a family again. Despite the challenges, we managed to build a life without Mom. Dad eventually started dating again and met Patricia, 50F, when I was in college. She was warm and kind, and for the first time in years, I saw Dad genuinely happy. They got married a few years later, and Patricia became the mother figure Derek and I had been missing for so long. I went off to college, then grad school, determined to make something of myself. I met Ryan, 33M, during my final year of law school. He was patient and understanding, never pushing me to open up before I was ready. With his support and a lot of therapy, I started to work through my abandonment issues. Life was good. I had a successful career as a corporate lawyer, a loving husband, and a supportive family. Derek had turned things around too, getting his GED and starting his own landscaping business. We weren't close, but we were on good terms, getting together for holidays and occasional family dinners. Then, 5 years ago, out of the blue, we got a letter from Mom. She explained that she had been battling severe depression and substance abuse issues when she left. According to her, she'd been in and out of rehab centers for years, trying to get clean and mentally stable. She claimed she left to protect us, believing we'd be better off without her dragging us down. The letter threw us all for a loop. Dad was angry, feeling that her explanation was too little, too late. Derek refused to even read it, saying he didn't care what excuses she had. I was conflicted. Part of me was curious to know more, to understand why she'd left us. But another part was furious that she thought abandoning us was somehow for our own good. For the past 5 years, Mom has been trying to reconnect. She sends birthday cards, holiday greetings, and frequent emails updating us on her life. She's been sober for 7 years now, has a steady job as a librarian, and has remarried to a man named Carl, 57M. I've maintained minimal contact, replying to her messages occasionally but keeping her at arm's length. Derek has blocked her on everything. Now, here's where things get complicated. I recently found out I'm pregnant with my first child. Ryan and I are overjoyed. When Mom found out, through a mutual family friend, she reached out, expressing her desire to be a part of her grandchild's life. She's been calling and texting nonstop, talking about wanting to make up for lost time and be the grandmother she never got to be as a mother. She's even offered to move closer to us to help with the baby. I don't know how to feel. On one hand, I understand that addiction is a disease, and I'm glad she got help. But on the other hand, she missed out on so much of our lives. She wasn't there for my first heartbreak, my high school graduation, or my wedding. How can I trust her to be there for my child? Ryan thinks I should give her a chance, saying people can change. But Derek is furious that I'm even considering it. He says letting her back in would be a betrayal to Dad and Patricia, who have been there for us all these years. I told Mom I needed time to think about it, but she's been pushy, saying she has a right to know her grandchild. This rubbed me the wrong way. After all, she gave up her rights when she walked out on us. Last week, things came to a head when Mom showed up unannounced at our house. She was crying, begging for a chance to explain herself in person. I was so shocked and overwhelmed that I shut the door in her face and called Ryan to come home from work. Now I'm torn. Part of me wants to forgive and give her a chance to be in my child's life. But a bigger part of me is scared of letting her in, only for her to disappoint us again. I don't want my child to experience the pain of abandonment like I did. Ida for considering keeping my mother out of my life and my future child's life, despite her attempts to reconnect. Update 1, it's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their thoughtful responses. Your perspectives really helped me process my feelings and decide on my next steps. After much consideration and many discussions with Ryan, I decided to meet with my mom, but on my terms. I arranged for us to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my workplace, so I could leave if things got overwhelming. The day of the meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. I got to the cafe early and chose a table in the corner, my back to the wall so I could see the entrance. When Mom walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman I remembered had always been meticulously put together, with perfectly styled hair and manicured nails. This woman looked softer somehow, her hair streaked with gray and laugh lines around her eyes. She hesitated when she saw me, and for a moment, I thought she might turn and run. But then she squared her shoulders and walked over. "Maggie," she said softly, using the nickname I hadn't heard in over 2 decades. "Thank you for meeting me." The meeting was intense. Mom started by apologizing profusely for showing up unannounced at our house. She admitted it was a desperate move and promised it wouldn't happen again. Then she launched into her story. She told me about the years leading up to her departure, how she had been struggling with depression since her teens but had always managed to keep it under control. Then, after Derek was born, she developed severe postpartum depression. She started self-medicating with alcohol and eventually harder drugs. As she spoke, memories I had long suppressed came flooding back. I remembered finding empty wine bottles hidden in the laundry hamper, the times when Mom would lock herself in the bathroom for hours, emerging with red-rimmed eyes and a too bright smile. I remembered the fights between her and Dad, muffled voices from behind closed doors late at night. Mom said she tried to hide it from us, but as her addiction worsened, she became terrified of hurting us. In her drug-addled state, she convinced herself that leaving was the only way to protect us. She thought Dad would be better off raising us alone than dealing with her addiction. Hearing all this was hard. I remembered moments from my childhood that suddenly made sense, times when Mom was sick and couldn't get out of bed, or when she'd snap at us for no reason. It was painful to realize how much she had been suffering without us knowing. But the hardest part was when she talked about her recovery journey. She spoke about the years of struggle, the relapses, the therapy sessions where she had to confront the pain she'd caused us. She showed me photos of herself from those years, and I hardly recognized the gaunt, haunted-looking woman in the pictures. I asked her why she waited so long to contact us. She said she wanted to be sure she was truly stable before reaching out. She was terrified that if she came back into our lives and then relapsed, it would hurt us even more. As she spoke, I found myself remembering the good times too. The way she'd sing off-key while making pancakes on Sunday mornings. How she taught me to braid my hair, her fingers gentle as she showed me how to weave the strands together. The sound of her laugh, warm and full, when Dad told one of his corny jokes. I also thought about Patricia, the woman who had stepped into the role of mother when we needed it most. Patricia, who had sat with me for hours helping me choose my prom dress, who had cheered the loudest at my law school graduation, who had held my hand and calmed my nerves on my wedding day. I felt a pang of guilt, as if considering letting Mom back into my life was somehow a betrayal of Patricia's love and support. By the end of our meeting, we were both in tears. I didn't forgive her, I'm not sure I ever fully can, but I did feel like I understood her better. The anger and hurt were still there, but alongside them was a new feeling of empathy. I told her I wasn't ready for her to be a full-time grandmother figure, but I was willing to start with small steps. We agreed to weekly phone calls and monthly in-person meetings. I made it clear that any slip-ups or pushy behavior would result in me cutting contact again. When I got home and told Ryan about the meeting, he was supportive but cautioned me to take things slow. He suggested we both attend Al-Anon meetings to learn how to set healthy boundaries with Mom. I was hesitant at first, it felt like admitting there was still a problem, but I agreed it might be helpful. The real challenge came when I told Derek about my decision. I invited him over for dinner, wanting to tell him in person. As soon as the words left my mouth, I saw his face harden. He was furious, accusing me of betraying our family. "How can you forget everything she put us through?" he demanded. "What about Dad? What about Patricia?" We had a huge argument that ended with him storming out and blocking my number. I was left standing in my kitchen, feeling like I'd lost my brother all over again. Ryan held me as I cried, assuring me that Derek would come around eventually. But I couldn't shake the feeling that in trying to heal one relationship, I might have irreparably damaged another. Dad and Patricia were surprisingly understanding when I told them. While they're not thrilled about Mom being back in the picture, they respect my decision to try and rebuild a relationship with her. Dad even shared that he'd forgiven Mom years ago, not for her sake, but for his own peace of mind. Patricia hugged me and said, "Honey, there's no rulebook for situations like this. You have to do what feels right for you." As for the pregnancy, everything is going well. We found out we're having a girl, and Mom's been respectful about not overstepping when it comes to baby-related things. She asks how I'm feeling but doesn't push for more involvement than I'm comfortable with. I'm still unsure about the future, but for now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Each week, as I talk to Mom on the phone, I feel like I'm getting to know her all over again. Sometimes it's easy, and we laugh about silly things like we used to. Other times it's hard, and the weight of the past hangs heavy between us. But we're trying, and right now, that feels like enough. Thanks again for all your support, Reddit. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and things have evolved. I'm now in my 3rd trimester, and the reality of becoming a mother myself has brought up a lot of complicated feelings about my own mother. The good news first, my relationship with Mom has been slowly improving. We've stuck to our agreed-upon schedule of weekly calls and monthly meetings. She's been respectful of my boundaries and hasn't tried to push for more involvement than I'm comfortable with. We've had some good conversations about the past, and while it's painful, it feels like we're making progress in understanding each other. During one of our calls, Mom shared more about her childhood. She told me about her own mother, my grandmother, who suffered from undiagnosed bipolar disorder. Mom described growing up in a household where the atmosphere could shift from joyous to terrifying in the blink of an eye. It helped me understand why she might have been afraid of her own mental health issues and how they could affect us. Ryan and I have been attending Al-Anon meetings, which have been incredibly helpful. They've given us tools to maintain healthy boundaries and cope with the complex emotions that come with having an addict in the family. Ryan's been my rock through all of this, always ready to listen when I need to vent or cry. Now for the not-so-good news, my relationship with Derek is still strained. He's barely speaking to me, only sending the occasional terse text to check if I'm okay. I miss my little brother terribly, but I'm trying to respect his feelings and give him space. It's hard, especially now as I prepare for the baby. I always imagined Derek would be an involved uncle, but now I'm not sure he'll even want to meet his niece. The situation came to a head last month at Dad and Patricia's anniversary party. It was the first time all of us, including Mom, were in the same room together. The tension was palpable from the moment we arrived. I could see Mom nervously fidgeting with her necklace, the same one Dad had given her on their 10th anniversary, I realized with a start. Patricia, ever the gracious hostess, was trying to keep everyone comfortable, but I could see the strain in her smile. Dad was unusually quiet, his eyes darting between Mom and Derek. Derek showed up late, clearly having had a few drinks. When he saw Mom, he froze for a moment, then his face twisted into a sneer. He started making loud, Sarcastic comments about family reunions and prodigal mothers. Dad tried to calm him down, but Derek was on a roll. Then he turned to me and started berating me for letting her back in. He accused me of forgetting all the times we cried ourselves to sleep wondering why Mom didn't love us enough to stay. It was like all the hurt and anger he'd been bottling up for years came pouring out. I was in tears, caught between wanting to comfort my brother and defend my decision. That's when Mom stepped in. She walked up to Derek, looked him in the eye, and said, "You're right to be angry. I failed you both in the worst way possible. I don't expect forgiveness, but please don't punish your sister for being more willing to hear me out. If you want to be angry at someone, be angry at me." Derek stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the party. Mom followed him, and they had a long talk in the backyard. I don't know exactly what was said, but when they came back in, Derek looked drained but calmer. He came over to me, gave me a hug, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Meg. I'm trying to understand, I promise." It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, but it felt like a tiny step in the right direction. Since then, things have been a bit easier. Derek and I have had a few phone conversations. He's still not comfortable with Mom being around, but he stopped giving me grief about my choices. He even asked about the baby, which felt like a huge breakthrough. As for Mom, seeing her stand up for me to Derek changed something in our relationship. It was the first time I felt like she was truly acting like a mother, putting her children's needs before her own feelings. It didn't erase the past, but it gave me hope for the future. With the baby due in just a couple of months, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. Mom has offered to help after the birth, but I've decided to have Patricia stay with us for the first few weeks instead. Mom understood and didn't push back. I know we still have a long road ahead, but I feel like we're all trying in our own ways. Thanks for listening, Reddit. I'll update again after the baby arrives. Update 3. Hello again, Reddit. It's been a whirlwind few months since my last update. Our daughter, Lily, was born 6 weeks ago, and she's absolutely perfect. Becoming a mother myself has given me a whole new perspective on my relationship with my own mom. The birth itself was intense but beautiful. Ryan was amazing throughout the whole process, and Patricia was a godsend in those first few weeks. Her calm presence and practical help made the transition to parenthood so much smoother. Now, onto the family dynamics. Mom respected our wishes and didn't come to the hospital or try to visit in those first couple of weeks. Instead, she sent a beautiful hand-knitted blanket for Lily with a note saying she was there whenever we were ready. When Lily was 3 weeks old, we invited Mom over to meet her. It was emotional, to say the least. Seeing Mom hold Lily, tears streaming down her face as she whispered promises to be the best grandmother she could be, hit me hard. For the first time, I truly understood the depth of what she must have gone through to leave us. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me empathize. Derek came to meet Lily a week later. He was clearly uncomfortable with Mom being there, but he made an effort to be civil. Watching my brother hold my daughter, I saw a softness in him I hadn't seen in years. He looked up at me and said, "She's got your eyes, Meg." Then, after a pause, he added, "And Mom's smile." It wasn't much, but it felt like a peace offering. Since then, we've been navigating this new family dynamic day by day. Mom comes over once a week to spend time with Lily. She's been respectful of our parenting choices and hasn't tried to overstep. Seeing her with Lily, I catch glimpses of the mother I remember from my early childhood, warm, loving, and fully present. Derek is slowly coming around. He and I have started having regular brother-sister dinners, just the two of us. We're rebuilding our relationship, and while we still disagree about Mom, we're learning to respect each other's choices. Dad and Patricia have been incredible throughout all of this. They've been supportive without being pushy, always ready to lend a hand or an ear when needed. Seeing Dad and Mom in the same room, cordially coexisting for the sake of their grandchild, is something I never thought I'd witness. As for me, becoming a mother has been transformative. Holding Lily, I'm struck by how fiercely I love her, how I would do anything to protect her. It's made me reflect on my own childhood and my relationship with Mom in new ways. I still struggle with the pain of the past, but I'm also hopeful for the future. I've started individual therapy to work through my complex feelings about Mom and our family history. It's bringing up a lot of old hurt, but it's also helping me process and move forward. I don't know what the future holds for our family. There are still tensions and unresolved issues. But looking at Lily, I'm reminded of the power of new beginnings. We're not a perfect family, but we're trying. And for now, that's enough. Thank you, Reddit, for being part of this journey with me. Your support and advice have been invaluable. I probably won't update again unless something major happens, but know that your kindness has made a real difference in my life.